Hello everyone, I'm Terry Duke, and welcome to Duke It Out. Now, I've been invested in politics and culture war for the better part of the last decade. Before I had this channel, you could often find me arguing with people in the comment sections of YouTube videos because I just enjoyed doing it. And part of creating this channel was that I would get to have the conversations and debates that I want to have based on my content. So you can go under any of the videos on my channel and you'll see me quite literally duking it out in my comment section. That being said, doing this also taught me to be more selective of the fights I pick. Not just because I do in fact have much better things to do, but because in spite of my passion for debating people, I've come to realize, especially now, that not everything should be a debate. In fact, one of the last and possibly one of the most insufferable exchanges I had on this channel was literally about whether some things should be debatable. And it made me think about the subject quite a lot, so I thought, why not share these thoughts with all of you? And I'll start by summarizing this debate I had. I am hiding the commenter's name for privacy, but if you do find the comment yourself, please don't arrest the guy. I'm not looking to have people gang up on him, I'm just sharing my thoughts. So, it all started with a recent video I made talking about Jubilee, in a recent debate they had with Mehdi. And although the video was mainly about the idiocy of people of color siding with the far right, I did make a remark on Jubilee, which was this. The real problem, fundamentally, is how this results in the platforming of people who really shouldn't have a platform to spread their ideas. I mean, one doctor against 20 anti-vaxxers? What's next? A climate scientist against 20 climate deniers? One Holocaust survivors versus 20 Holocaust deniers? At some point, you need to draw a line over what kind of rhetoric you want to allow on your channel, whether it's being challenged or not. Unless you're Jubilee, for whom it's all about the clicks. This one remark spawned one of the most debate-brained people I ever encountered. And the gist of this person's argument to my saying that lines should be drawn on who and what to platform for debates was basically that everything should be up for debate, even when people fundamentally disagree with each other. And since my comment was about the platforming of anti-vaxxers, his argument was that nothing is ever definitive, especially when it comes to science, that there's always a chance of making new discoveries that can drastically change what we assumed was true. The example he used for his argument was that of bloodletting, an old medical practice which consisted of bleeding patients as it was believed that certain illnesses were in the blood, and getting the bad blood out would cure the illness. And basically what he was saying was that at some point in time, people who argued bloodletting was not effective would have been regarded the same way people might regard the anti-vax movement today. That is, the first people challenging the medical consensus on bloodletting would have been a minority at first and not taken seriously. However, because debates were allowed to take place and the consensus was challenged, well, today bloodletting is no longer practiced and medicine has improved drastically as a result. Therefore, no matter how frivolous some positions might be, all ideas should be open to debate, and if the consensus is overwhelmingly opposed, then the anti-vax people should be destroyed with facts and logic in the free marketplace of ideas. And if they do make good points, then we can have a debate and it can lead to something constructive. Now, I personally think that there is a lot wrong with this line of argument, but I'd break it into two parts. For one, it's very much about the broader question of whether everything should be up to debate, no matter how unpopular or frivolous. And for two, it also touches on one of the primary factors that can lead debates to be completely useless, and that's a matter of whether people are even debating in good faith to begin with. So, regarding the first point, that everything should be up to debate, as it can actually lead the science to make progress. The first problem with that argument is that it's not actually something I argued against. What I argued against specifically was platforms like Jubilee giving a microphone to any conspiracy-brained idiot, and giving them the same amount of space as a qualified doctor to debate vaccines. If you want scientists to debate the evidence to forward the science, you don't have them debate uneducated people, whose arguments come from QAnon Facebook posts made with AI shared on WhatsApp. You have the scientists debate each other, which they already are. It's an integral part of the scientific method, and generally there is a process through which scientists review each other's works called peer review. Point is, I'm absolutely down for the scientific consensus being challenged, and I do think generally that accepting that science and academia is never static, that it continuously evolves, is important to acknowledge. I just don't think that's what Jubilee is doing. Jubilee isn't advancing the science. The mere idea of platforming flat earthers and making the video a debate is giving unwarranted credibility to an idea that should never be taken seriously. So it's not that I'm against having certain debates, it's that I don't think it's morally responsible to platform people to debate issues they are not even remotely qualified to debate. But for the second point, of whether people even debate in good faith, it's the most crucial part of a debate, right? Even if you're not trying to convince your opponent, but the people watching the debate, the point is, if one of the people involved doesn't debate in good faith, or they're using debate to hide their true intentions, then nothing constructive can ever be achieved. And the reason I point that out is because this person was not actually debating in good faith. Or rather, they were not honest with their intentions, they were hiding them. You see, the second part of his argument was that, while he agrees that maybe random people shouldn't be the ones debating, for example, climate change, it would be nonetheless interesting if Jubilee actually platformed qualified people to debate it. In his own words, he's just a very curious guy, and he'd like to hear both sides of the debate from people who have the knowledge and expertise to back up their arguments. And his example of qualified people to debate climate change include Al Gore, who is not a scientist, but a politician who made a documentary one time, and Dr. Willie Soon. Oh, I'm sorry, the quote, astrophysicist, aerospace engineer, and researcher at the Solar and Stellar Physics Division of the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Dr. Willie Soon. That's quite the impressive list of qualifications for introducing this doctor, isn't it? The problem is, if you do a quick Google research of Dr. Willie Soon, you will find out very quickly that his research on climate change was flatly rejected by the scientific community over 20 years ago. It was also discovered that his research was funded by oil companies. If this commenter generally wanted to hear both sides of the climate change debate and was just a curious guy, he wouldn't feel the need to preemptively list all of the qualifications of an actual climate denier. What he's really doing is listing all of the qualifications to distract away from the fact that this Willie Soon is a complete joke. And this is not a mistake. He can't know all of the guy's qualifications without also already knowing that the guy was debunked. So what this framing implies ultimately is that this commenter, in spite of what he's actually saying about being very curious, is actually probably a climate denier himself. And he uses the idea of debate to give his views more credibility. And in this case, 97% of scientists agree that climate change is real and caused by humans, so what is there to debate exactly? And at this point I ask myself the question of this video: should anything be up for debate? Once you've figured out that the other person is not debating in good faith, I think it's perfectly fine not to entertain anything they say. But beyond that, regardless of context, the lines are always going to be arbitrary. In the context of science and academia, I'll maintain here that these are fields of expertise which require experts to fully understand. And I think it's a perfectly fine position for us uneducated plebeians to just rely on the scientific consensus, even as we acknowledge that it can change or that the scientific community can still make mistakes. But that's still just my opinion. But when it comes to politics, I think ultimately it's really just about how you feel about the issue at hand. Steve Shives is a YouTuber I've discovered recently who makes a lot of political commentary, and in the process of making this video, I stumbled on a video of his which has a very similar title, in which he speaks of debates on trans issues and whether trans people's rights to exist should be up for debate. And so, here's how he put it.
When you have a debate, it's implicit that both sides of the debate represent valid points of view, and both sides of the debate deserve to be taken seriously and given a hearing in the forum in which the debate takes place. And the problem is, not all points of view deserve that. For example, completely off the top of my head, human rights. If your perspective is, I don't want to respect other people's rights, if your perspective is, I think I should have the right to deny other people, including my own children, their right, if that's your perspective, if that's what you bring to the table, hey, you shouldn't get a seat at the table. Fuck you. Shut up. Sit down. And I feel like that's the most productive way to handle it.
This here is likely what the right would describe as the intolerant left. You know, shutting down debates immediately, minus the stereotypical blue hair in this case. But it's also a failure from the right to fully understand the position. Steve here comes from the position that trans people are valid and have a right to exist with equal rights and dignity. So if that's what he believes on a moral level, why would he ever entertain a debate or conversation with someone who doesn't acknowledge trans people and who wants to take away their rights? Another person that comes to mind who talked about this is ContraPoints in our video The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling, in which he brought up an old conversation between Ben Shapiro and Joe Rogan discussing gay rights, and everyone in the comment section talking about how wholesome it was that two people who disagreed with each other on the issue of gay rights could still have a calm conversation. And as Contra points out, it's easy for two straight guys to discuss the validity of gay people when the outcome of those ideas don't actually impact either of them. You can take the same logic for women's rights, or any other social issue that involves the rights of a marginalized group, and it becomes easier to understand why a lot of people on the left are quick to shut down the conversation instead of debating the ideas. I myself have created a Discord server for my 2 channels a while ago, and one of the most active channels on there is the politics one. And initially I approached it as like, we can debate anything so long as everyone is respectful. But as I started getting a few queer and trans people occasionally tuning in, having right-wingers on the Discord debating their validity became a problem. Turns out that if you're trying to have an inclusive community, you can't really let intolerance spread for the mere sake of debate. So it's not so much the intolerant left, as much as the left is intolerant of intolerance, and I'm definitely not the first person to say this. But ultimately, to bring it all the way back to the guy who started this fun exercise, he came at this from the position that anything should be up to debate. The exchange started specifically with science, but eventually he made the same argument for politics. And I disagree, but it's made me wonder again to what extent. And again, I acknowledge that once you decide to draw a line, the line itself is going to be arbitrary and inconsistent. But I also think, when it comes down to your own personal beliefs, that it's also perfectly reasonable to draw these lines. At the end of the day, I still very much enjoy debating, but I also do believe that some things, if they shouldn't be debated, they shouldn't be entertained, period. For instance, I don't care to debate whether the earth is round or flat, just as I don't care to debate whether different groups of people deserve equal rights. And anyone whose arguments start not with the argument itself, but with the mere idea that they should have the freedom to say what they want to say, these people have never made a good argument for anything. This is where intent, even when expressed honestly, still matters a lot. Going back to the video that started all of this, at one point Mehdi realized that the creep he was debating was in fact a fascist, and he decided not to debate further. And why would he? It's not just that this guy wants to oppress groups different from his. Fascists don't believe in debate or democracy, except as a means to get to power. This is something the guy himself says openly. You're not changing their minds with debate, you're only giving them attention they shouldn't get, through which they launder their ideas to a larger audience. And this is definitely something I hold Jubilee responsible for. But for me, debating isn't so much about convincing the other person or even the audience. While it would be great if I managed to do it, ultimately it's about putting my own arguments and beliefs to the test, to see whether my views and ideas still make sense when they're challenged. If I can't make an argument for something, then I probably don't have a good understanding of it and need to reflect more on it. But if I can make an argument that someone else cannot counter substantially, then maybe I'm onto something. And if the other person does make sound arguments for which I have no counter, well, in that case, it's a process of its own. People rarely change their minds on something immediately unless they had no investment in the position. But ultimately, like I said, none of it means anything unless both parties are debating in good faith, and I think unfortunately these days, that's probably the biggest problem with debates, as much as I enjoy them. But yeah, those are my current thoughts on debates, and when they should be entertained. I'm not sure I was clear or if I even made sense, but I'm curious as to what you guys think. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.